for the past couple months, I've found myself using the words Rumi's field a whole lot more often. And when you came in, there was the short version of it, but here's the full version. Beyond our ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make sense anymore. This has become my place to stand when I feel overwhelmed by discussions, actual discussions, and internet discussions like on Facebook about the world today. From Israel to Ferguson, Missouri, from guns to marriage equality, from politics to religion, from personal conflict to work challenges, I just keep planting my feet in Rumi's field until I know what to say or what to do. And one of my friends accused me of, quote unquote, leaning on a pithy metaphor. Yeah, not wise. Instead of taking a stand or seeing things the way they really are. And so after I regained my composure from reading that comment, I went back to the field. And I explained to my friend that this isn't just a metaphor for me. This image of the field, what it means, what these words say, that's most important to me because it keeps me true to who I want to be in the world. I want to be that person. Now, on the flip side of things, I do have moments of slippage. And in those moments of slippage, I become the not Rumi poem. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. Everyone that pisses me off should go to that field and stay there. Wouldn't that be nice sometimes? Thank you for your opinion and perspective. Go to your field. Bye-bye. We'll go back to this one. Okay. So here's the thing that I've been figuring out recently. And it's probably not recent, but it's become more evident recently because of everything that's happening in the world. We all judge. I'm going to speak for everyone. We all judge all the time. Ourselves, our friends, our family, people we don't know, politicians, policies, countries, movies, situations, everything. On and on and on. We're probably judging something right now. Within us, around us, maybe what I'm saying. Every second, it's happening. And it's not always a bad thing. You know, there is that expression, use good judgment. Use good judgment. Which I think, you know, to use good judgment means to assess a situation and make a decision that mostly benefits everyone. And that's a good thing. When we use good judgment, we're being kind, we're being open. But it's the other judgment that we're talking about today, the one that gets us into trouble. So when Heather and I went to Italy, we were walking down the back streets of Assisi trying to find a restaurant that somebody had recommended. They said it was amazing, so we were going to go look for it. The back streets of Assisi is kind of like a stone labyrinth. All the streets kind of curve, and they all look the same, and it's beautiful. I love it. You can get lost for hours in this teeny tiny town. So we were starting to get really hungry. And if you're familiar with the term, we were starting to get hangry, which is the combination of hungry and angry. Never a good combo. And so we decided to ask someone for help. And we saw this nun appear. And she was in what I call casual sister attire. You know, it wasn't like the full-on habit. She had like a gray dress and the small coif. But it was clearly she was a sister. And so I had my little Italian phrase book ready, and I approached her and started in my sweet little broken Italian, only to discover that she was American. I'm like, oh, okay. So we started chatting and talking about, you know, what she was doing there, what we were doing there, and where was this restaurant. And she asked us where we were from, and we said Alaska. And she said, oh, Sarah Palin. Oh my. And I took a deep breath. Because as we all know, many people have different opinions about Sarah Palin, some even here in this state. And what I've learned is instead of jumping in and making a comment that could possibly alienate or hurt someone, I've learned to say, yes, kind of do a little fishing. And so I wasn't sure, so I was about to make a joke, and then I stopped myself, and I asked her some kind of question that let her, gave her the opportunity to share her thoughts. And she loves Sarah Palin. And so I was like, oh, yes, isn't she something? From my Jewish mother, I learned how to agree without agreeing. And Heather started to say something, and I was like, don't argue with a nun and a CZ about Sarah Palin. It's just not that important. And so after we got the directions and we said our farewells, Heather and I chatted about this moment. And, I just shared that it wasn't worth it to me to get into an argument with a nun in a CZ about somebody who really isn't that important to me. Sarah is who she is. And she doesn't play that important a role in my life. So why judge this woman? Why punish this woman for where she was? That wasn't necessary to me. It was okay to leave it alone. However, in these days of social media and heated discussions, we really don't always have that luxury anymore. And I'm finding with myself that it's just as easy to judge someone as it is for me to take a breath. I was driving down Elmore the other day, and when you're heading south on Elmore and you're approaching Dowling and it's 2 lanes, and then after you cross Dowling you have to merge, and everyone knows this. Everyone knows this. So there was this gentleman in a very large pickup with very big tires who was right behind me in my little baby Prius. And he was riding very close to the back of the Prius. And as we approached the light to Dowling, he whipped around behind me, and I knew his intent was to speed up as fast as he could to go in front of all the other cars before he had to merge. And I heard myself say out loud, well, that's no surprise. Horrible. It was horrible. Instant catch. What have I taught? What have I said so many times? If someone cuts us off or is driving rudely, it's entirely possible that they just got a phone call that their loved one is in the ER, that they left their stove on, that their child called and needs them home right away. There could be any number of reasons for this person to do what he did, and yet I immediately had a really solid judgment on him, his vehicle, his motives, and his presence on the planet. Yeah. So we call that other thing, we call it benefit of the doubt. And I did some research on benefit of the doubt. And it refers to, this is the actual definition, the concept of taking on a positive opinion or judgment when there is some, but not sufficient evidence to think otherwise. It's also defined as a favorable opinion or judgment adopted despite uncertainty. I sure will. So the first one is a positive opinion or judgment when there is some, but not sufficient evidence to think otherwise. Or a favorable opinion or judgment adopted despite uncertainty. So without knowing, we go, you got to pass. I'll give you a pass. And that's the key. That's the key. It's the uncertainty. I don't live in Israel. I have friends who live in Israel, and I'm in touch with them. I was born and raised Jewish, so I have a connection to Israel. I'm the only member of my family who's never been there. I have a great desire to stand on Holy Land. I grew up with the Holocaust being taught to me 24/7. Don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. So I have those images and that thought ingrained in my psyche. I have all of this information, and I don't live in Israel. So what I do know is that regardless of what side I stand on, what side I take, killing is wrong. And there are people on both sides of this conflict who are killing others, and there are people on both sides of this conflict who are suffering. Not politicians, not governments, regular people. And check out that judgment. I did it again. So even as I'm trying to justify my lack of judgment about what is happening, I inserted judgment by differentiating between politicians and real people. I'm sure I'm not the first one to do that. Ferguson, Missouri. After the initial situation unfolded, there was this sudden media surge trying to sway public opinion of this young man by talking about how he robbed a store before he got shot. So to clarify, he stole a box of really cheap cigars, and the punishment for stealing in America, I don't believe, is to be shot. I'm pretty sure unless the law changed, that's still not the punishment for stealing. So now the surge and the sway is happening because people from outside of Ferguson, people from outside of Missouri have been, well, they're not anymore, but they have been infiltrating Ferguson to take advantage of an already painful situation by fanning the flames of violence for their own agenda. And I did it again. By simply commenting on what is taking place, I added my own judgment about these people coming and what's happening. It's tricky stuff. There's really no way out of it. There's always going to be a piece of judgment attached to things. You should hear me in my car when I listen to NPR. All right, here's a little moment into the secret world of Reverend Rachel. I talk back to my radio. I do, and I'm brilliant. I'm brilliant and I'm smart and I know everything. And I let them know what I think about what they're saying to me. I call politicians on their pontificating, and I argue with the commentators on their reporting, and generally I spew my important opinion about what is happening in the world. And I can, because it's my car. I can. We all can. That's our right. And that's the thing about judgment, is it's completely subjective. It's always subjective. It's only coming from what we know. Some people call it, well, they just say, well, I'm just expressing my opinion. That's true. Others say outright, okay, I don't mean to be judgmental, but. Some say, well, I'm just listening to my instincts about this thing, and my instincts tell me a judgment. And then others, will just call people out. Just say, man, you're judging. And even by doing that, I'm judging you for judging. It's like this endless mirror thing. So judgment is a part of who we all are. We should need a JA. Hi, I'm Reverend Rachel. I'm a judger. Hi, Rachel. And my guess is that judgment, like any tool in a toolbox, can be used. And we can use it well. Here's an example. When I lived in New York City, I used to do things like test God. It was fun. I'm sure God loved it. Now I just argue with God. But then I used to test God. And one of my tests was called the Walk of Faith. One night, at about 11:30 at night, I walked down a very dark stretch of 3 blocks from Times Square to my apartment on West 49th Street, on the darkest street where there was no businesses, a lot of dumpsters, many rats. And I walked slowly with my head up. This was my test of God. If I can get home without being assaulted or killed, then God exists. Not good judgment. It's great. It's a test of faith, and I survived. Thank God. However, not the best judgment. And there are times in my life when I feel like I'm testing God or pushing God's limits or even just pushing life's limits. And I saw these pictures and I just cracked up. I have a feeling that my guardian angel often looks like this. Just, oh, Rachel, seriously? Come on. Stop testing me. The thing is that at that time, for whatever reason, I needed to push myself and God to the edge to see if God was really there. Similarly, when I returned from New York City, here comes the bicycle story, I did what I called a bike ride of faith. This was possibly the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life, talk about judging. Without any training or preparation whatsoever, I rode my bicycle 45 miles from Beechwood, Ohio to Ashtabula. I didn't check out the road. I didn't clock it or see if it was even rideable. I had this little racing bike. It was 1988. I had one bottle of water and an apple. I was completely unprepared. 45 miles. It took close to 7 hours. And by the end, the temperature was 90 degrees. It was dangerous. It was stupid. And I didn't really use good judgment. And yet I wouldn't allow anyone else, including myself, to judge that experience. When people were like, that was stupid, I'd be like, nuh-uh, it was a ride of faith. Because it was my experience. It was mine. Subjectively, my ride of faith. And I needed that and the walk of faith. I needed those things to happen the way they did. And so when other people judge them, I came to their defense. When I talk about them now with you, oh my God, that was so stupid. However, it's okay that I judge me. You have permission to judge yourself. As if you needed that. So imagine for a moment if we could release this experience of negatively judging not only others, but negatively judging ourselves for things that we don't understand, for circumstances beyond our scope of knowledge. Imagine if we could just let that go. Completely. Done with it. This is what inspired me. Ellen DeGeneres. Do we have to know who's gay and who's straight? Can't we just love everybody and judge them by the car they drive? What if we could just let it go? So here's some perspectives. Think about this. Other people have spoken wisely about this. Martin Luther King said, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Clearly, we're still working that out in this country. Jesus, pretty decent teacher, taught not to judge others, for then we will also be judged. Logical. There's a gentleman named Henry Nguyen who I will be reading the continuing ed class that I did with seminary last year, the 4 Sundays, is continuing. I'm very excited. And we're going to be reading a book by Henry J. Nguyen, and he wrote, as long as we continue to live as if we are what we do, what we have, and what other people think about us, we will remain filled with judgments, opinions, evaluations, and condemnations. We will, check this out, we will remain addicted to putting people and things in their right place. Oh, I do it all the time. I do it all the time. They should be doing that. They shouldn't be doing that. Billy Graham. Billy Graham is quoted as saying, it is the Holy Spirit's job to convict. God's job is to judge. My job is to love. And I had serious judgment around that one. Seriously. Because I'm like, Billy Graham, seriously? Because, I don't think you're letting God do his job. Its job. And so when I felt my judgment about Billy Graham come up, about his not judgment, I thought, I have to find one more. Find one more. And this is from Abraham Lincoln. I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. Isn't that awesome? And that's it. I think that's it. I think that is the kernel. when we actually get to know people better, when we stand in or walk in their shoes, really look into their true essence, we find, I'm trying to find, that we will judge less. It'll be just more difficult to judge. And this process brings forth the divine experiences of forgiveness and compassion and patience and ultimately change. I came across this photo a while ago. It's from the Ukraine, but I recently posted it in reference to Ferguson. Imagine the power of being confronted with your own image as you attempt to oppress someone else. Imagine that child in Ferguson being pepper sprayed by the police officer, holding up a mirror to that police officer's face. I don't think he could have done what he did if he was looking at himself, if he was looking at his own face. It's perception. It's how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive others. Shifts in perception bring about compassion and understanding. So I'm going to throw in a pop culture reference. I apologize. I've gotten addicted to a new show. I've been watching Dexter. So for those of you who are not familiar with Dexter, it's a show about this serial killer who only kills bad guys. He had a traumatic experience as a child, and he has become a forensics expert. He does blood spatter analysis at crime scenes. And he has become this sort of dark hero serial killer, but only of the bad guys that the police can't get. And the whole show, every character is dealing with the issue of judgment. How people interact on that show with each other is fascinating because it's based on what they don't know about each other that we, the audience, do know. So we know all the information, and yet we're watching these people stumble around and make decisions about each other and judgments about each other and accusations about each other. And all the while, we're having this weird experience of cheering on and protecting and caring about the serial killer. We don't want him to get caught because we like him now. You know, he's doing something good. I don't know. It's so fascinating. And so what's also cool about the show is it does this film noir kind of technique where he voices over his thoughts to us. So he'll be having a conversation with somebody and then we'll be hearing what he's really thinking, which is totally amazing. I would love if people had thought bubbles. Like, it would be so helpful to be like, oh, that's not what you just said. You're saying something else. And so it's just really enlightening to me when I think about how many times I choose not to reveal why I'm doing something, or I choose to stay silent about something that I would love people to know, and yet I choose, no, that's mine to hold. Or when I'm wondering what somebody else's motivation is, I'm judging their action based just solely on what I'm thinking instead of going, can I see your thought bubble? You know, just please tell me. And there is a strong sense of right and wrong in this show. It's just weirdly twisted. So the thing is that one of the things about the show that I really like is we understand him because he is choosing to see some people as the other. Like, he's choosing who's the bad guys. He's not a bad guy. Although he thinks of himself as a monster, but he's like a good monster. It's very strange. But anyway, it's this whole idea of the other, and we've talked about this before. It's my favorite Purim talk, is who's the other. And, you know, you're the other to someone else. I'm the other to someone else. You're my other, I'm your other. We're all the others to someone else. And as long as we make people a bad other, then we are locking them in to a position where we get to punish them or judge them or exclude them. I don't want to be another. I want to be one with everybody. I want to hang out in Rumi's Field, drinking limeade and eating BLTs and dancing to great music, you know? And so the bottom line, we're getting there, is that judgment happens because we have this limited perspective on what we're forming the judgment about. So we create an other experience, and we make our perspective the truth and make their perspective judged and wrong. So a couple days ago I was at a traffic light, and I hear this boom, boom, boom coming up behind me. I'm like, nothing irritates me more. Well, that's not true. It irritates me. So the booming bass, and I immediately in my head form the image of who's driving what car. So it's a young guy driving a truck or some kind of jacked up, car with this big booming bass. And I completely have my story about this person. And pulled up alongside me, booming away, making all this racket, is a Mini Cooper, teeny tiny car, driven by a white dude my age. And I'm like, that's hilarious. I started laughing because I immediately slammed my own judgment in the face. It's like, and then we learn. So I'm like, all right, that's an improvement. I've learned. So I realized that today was kind of more of this meandering experience and an exploration more than a concrete, here's a list of 10 things you can do to stop judging kind of talk. And, and I think that's okay. I'm not going to judge myself too harshly about that. I'm going to try not to, anyway. But I would like to leave you with a thought. There's a Sufi practice that I've been reminded of recently that helps me check on myself when I am thinking or about to speak something into judgment. And it's a practice geared towards speaking. However, I think that it includes our inner dialogue and our thoughts as well. And it's the Sufi gates, Gates. Before you speak, let your words pass through 3 gates. At the first gate, ask yourself, is it true? At the second, ask, is it necessary? At the third gate, ask, is it kind? Similarly to Byron Katie's work with Is It True? How do you know? So we need to really stop ourselves on that first one. Is it true, and is it true to who? Is it true to my subjective experience, or is it true? I truly believe that there is inherent good in everyone, and that most people are making the best choices that they can in each moment with the tools and the information that they have. And so for me, with judgment, it comes down to this. Who do I want to be in the world? When I am sitting in judgment on others, I can actually feel in my body that I am not being that person. So as always, it's personal. As always, it's an inside job. So we keep trying. And most importantly, in our moments of slippage, don't judge. Let yourself off the hook as you would like others to let you off the hook. Let's do some praying. Oh, deep breath. Okay. So as I immediately check myself judging about how long the talk was, I'm going to forgive myself. I'm going to let myself off the hook. And I'm going to know that there's nowhere else for anybody to be right now. We're all here together. We're all connecting together. This is where we need to be. And so what I know to be true is that each of us longs to be seen, to be known, to be recognized, and to simply connect with life. And so just as we want that, there are others who want that as well. And sometimes those others cut us off in traffic. And sometimes those others throw cigarette butts out their car window. And sometimes those others pick up food off the shelf at cars and put it in their pocket. Sometimes those others do things that we are like, no, that's not okay. And we don't know their story. We don't know what happened the moment before. We don't know the phone call they just hung up from. We don't know about the job they just got fired from. We don't know the circumstances that they're in. And it's not our job to judge them. It's our job to see them, to hear them, and to reflect back who we are in our best moments so that they can see what that looks like. So when we do meet someone who's struggling and is acting in a way that seems hurtful or destructive, through our lives, through our way of being on a good day, we get to live by example, as Emerson teaches us. We get to live our life. We don't need to speak our words. We just need to be who we are. And that light shines out and others see it. And then we get to let it go. And not wait for a result or look for a change. We just need to know that we've done good. And so I invite each of us today, including myself, including everyone who's listening to this eventually when it is posted, I invite each and every one of us to take a moment to let ourselves off the hook for anything that we are holding ourselves in judgment for. And I invite you to think of at least one or two people, maybe strangers, maybe somebody you know, and just let them off the hook. Just say, maybe I don't know all the facts. Maybe it's just not my job to judge. Maybe I just want to be the person that I'd like to see myself be. And let's let that go. With gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. I say amen, ashe.